Thank you very much. Looks like there's a lot of exciting events coming up for Tap Talk. Definitely look that out on my calendar. How is the volume? More? Higher? Yell? Okay. How is this? Okay. Cool. I just want to get a gauge kind of on everybody here. I know that there are some native plant lovers here already. I know there's Wild Ones members. Are there any like total beginner newbies who are like really native plant curious? Yeah? Cool. Any like seasoned vets or like traditional gardeners that are wanting to incorporate more native plants? Nice. And then who's just here for the beer? Yeah, okay, right. I'm gonna say that. Yeah. Totally understandable. Cool. Yeah, like Jennifer mentioned, my name is Amanda. I'm Lucky Bird Native. It's a seed grown native plant nursery focusing on Wisconsin native, and they're doing garden designs, garden installations, and potted plants at different pop-ups, and hoping to be having a permanent nursery location moved this year as well, or this coming year. So, just want to mention I have a little bit of information on the table over here. You can totally help yourself. The native plant bird material, there's cards, and there are seed packets that you need as well. So help yourself to those. And I just want to mention I'm super cool with this being like an open discussion. I know I'm wearing this Britney Spears microphone, but that doesn't mean I need to have the floor the entire time. So please feel free to raise your hand or holler or whatever. Ask questions or give your feedback. So I just want to start with some really general information because I didn't know where we were at in the overall base knowledge of native plants. So what even is a native plant? Why are these different from other plants? And a native plant is a plant that's adapted to its local conditions over thousands of years. So they're going to be really good at growing where they're from. And this is all in the context of the pre-colonialism time frame, which is not to say that that's how things were always before. Native Americans have been managing lands for a long time before white people came here. So that's just something to think about, but that's often the time frame that we use. Okay, so I'm just going to talk about a few native plants just to like get us into it, get us excited, see what variety there is. Does anyone know any of these plants? Yeah? What do you know? I mean, yep.
And that's
Bloodroot and milkweed. Yeah, the one on the left here is swamp milkweed, also known as rosy milkweed, or I believe common name. But that one's more wet-loving milkweed, and then this on the right is bloodroot, and it is what we call a spring ephemeral. So that means that they're fleeting. They're there for a short amount of time in the spring. These are often in like rich woodlands when there are no leaves on the trees, and all of that soil is being warmed by the sun leaf out. And it's pretty cool because the flowers come out before the leaves. And if you were to pull it, which you shouldn't, it would be like a red, bloody-ish like sap that comes out. And then I just want to give us a reminder that trees are native plants as well. There's so much talk about flowers, less talk about native grasses, and I feel like even less talk about native trees. And we'll talk a little bit more about their big impact, but they should be included in this as well. And then ferns, bryophytes. So these are non-flowering plants that actually produced by spores, but I feel like they're often underlooked in the native plant world. I think because, you can't really grow them from seed. I've tried to grow ferns from spores before, it takes a really long time and you need really specific conditions. But that's another really fun one to add a lot of texture to your garden as well. All right, we doing okay so far? Is the volume better? So I know I really care about native plants, but why should you? Why should everybody else? These are the three bigger reasons I would say that we're just going to go over that they support wildlife, they're conserving water, and they improve soil health. Has everyone heard plant more milkweed, save the monarch? I feel like it's been really, really loud. And why? What do we know why? What's the big deal? Is there something going on?
Oh, yeah.
What's that? Yeah. There's a really special connection between monarchs and milkweed. They have evolved together, and I just want to kind of highlight that native plants are really the backbone of building relationships between different things in our natural world, and this is one example. Milkweed has this, common milkweed especially, but all milkweed has this white sticky sap. If you ever pull a leaf off or break a stem, it's like this latex-made sap, which is poisonous to herbivores. So a lot of things don't eat it, except monarchs. And they have formed this relationship and evolved to be co-evolution BFFs. So the monarch will come to the milkweed and pollinate it and lay its eggs on it. The tiny little egg, you see it on the bottom left there. So if you have milkweed in your yard, that's what you might be looking for. And a lot of predators of monarchs know, well, I guess predators in general, just see a monarch and be like, that's poisonous because they eat this poisonous sap. So they have that mutual benefit. But one kind of fun thing that drives this evolutionary relationship even further, is there is a butterfly called a viceroy. Does anyone know which one's which? They're both on the screen. Well, this one is the viceroy, and that's the milkweed, that's the monarch. The viceroy has evolved to mimic the monarch and to look poisonous, essentially, even though it's not. And it doesn't consume any milkweed at all, but just kind of an interesting adaptation. And they look almost identical, but the way to tell them apart is this lower band right here that will help you distinguish that is not a monarch. Fun fact. Okay, birds and native plants. If you can't tell, I love birds. And I love thinking about the fact that native plants support so much more than just pollinators. There's a huge push to save pollinators, which is totally valid and totally true. But that's just one of the dominoes in the line. There's a big bird decline, and I think that it's because you need to save the pollinators, because you need to plant pollinators. So if you grow it, they will come. Go plant a bird feeder in your backyard. Native plants offer seeds, berries, nesting, structure, shelter, and insects for their young. They can't do it without native plants. The native plants are going to be drawing in the insects for them. And I have a little pop quiz. How many caterpillars does it take to feed a nest of chickadees for one single day? 10? 100? 30? Any other guesses? All right, here it is.
What?
You're off about. Sorry, Gina. You're off by 560. Isn't it amazing? Just thinking you see one caterpillar a day, you get really excited, oh my gosh, that was so much fun. But That's so many to collect every day, and native plants really put in the legwork for attracting them and making spaces for those things to thrive, so then the birds can thrive as well. So yeah, you can use that at trivia or whatever now. And just to go on that a little bit further, this is a non-native ginkgo tree. Those are often planted as city trees. They're from Asia. They support 6 different types of caterpillars, and then this is a burrow, beautiful native Wisconsin tree, and it supports over 500 types of caterpillars. Not 500 individuals, but 500 species. So trees are really important, and plants as well. Do you have any questions so far? Doing good? Okay, cool. So I'm gonna move into water use of native plants. Like I was mentioning before, they're very adapted to their local conditions and climates and their soil types. So on the right here are some saguaro cactuses, cacti, however you want to do it, in Arizona. And on the left is like a northern hardwood forest. And on the right, you're going to see these obviously have adapted to be in a desert. You wouldn't try to put one of these cacti into the forest. Same as with one of the ferns at the ground level, they've adapted to be really shade tolerant and have a lot of leaf surface area, so they can use that light to their advantage when they're able to get the little bit that they do on that bottom forest floor. If you were to put a fern in the desert, obviously it would shrivel up and die right away. So it just goes to show, like, kind of beginning to think about when you're using native plants at home, you want to really focus on the right plant for the right place, and that way it would be a lower maintenance line. Another fun fact: the good old lawn. Americans use 7 billion gallons of water per day for water and landscaping, which is more than washing clothes and showering combined. That's just mind-boggling to me. I know my dad's a big lawn guy, and I've been really working on him. Like, just let me come over, like, and he thinks he's ready to go outside and mow the lawn again, like, come spring. So he's gonna be a tough one to crack, but I'm gonna get him one of these days. But no one likes the lawn on the left. You know, midsummer, it's dead. You really gotta water it. You gotta fertilize it. And native plants, after your first real initial year of establishment, you can just leave them alone. They're pretty hands off. Yeah, you have to do some weeding, but like you're not going to be watering, you're not going to be fertilizing. They're all used to living in the native soil that they're planted in. And then just another little tidbit on water and native plants or rain gardens. This is a beautiful way to be managing water, stormwater off of your house, or in larger places like Franklin Elementary. This is a beautiful native rain garden there to collect a lot of water. The water was flooding over the road with like almost every rain event, and there's like a lot of residential houses across the street. It was not making it good for transportation, so they put in this rain garden, and this really slows the water down and lets it absorb into the soil, and that's also gonna help the soil filter any pollutants off that are running in that water as well, like road salts and stuff like that. All right, so moving on to soil health. I just love this picture. I guess it's part really, but these are some Midwest prairie plants and their root systems. The length of the root in feet, and then the height of the plant. So as you can see here, some look a lot different than others. The pumpkin plant here was one of the longest, that's 15 feet deep. And then you have something more like purple prairie clover at 10 feet, and then prairie dropseed is that one in the middle, and that's more of a fibrous root system. So you can kind of see that some of these plants have really long taproots. And the benefits of having really long taproots are being really drought tolerant, which makes a lot of sense being in a berry. They're able to access those water storage a lot more readily than something that has shallower roots to them. And something like really fibrous root systems are really good for like slope, reducing erosion off of the slope. Does anyone notice anything goofy, anything silly on this chart? There is turf grass on here. I don't think I can zoom in, but it's right here. It's so cute, right? They're trying. Those grass roots, well, when I say grass, I mean like lawn grass roots are about 3 inches deep. So they're kind of just like not really adding anything to your soil. It's just you don't let it go to seed or flower, so they're not adding anything on top either. But just kind of something to keep in mind about like the impact, like the big difference. Like, yeah, native grasses, sure, but like when you see something like this, it's like, oh, okay, like maybe they are a little bit more different than it seems. Oh, that went really far. Don't look, that's for later. Okay. Cool, we're back. So a few more benefits of nice long roots are they're going to be increasing water infiltration. So those roots are creating tunnels in the soil, and that allows water to go down them as well. The roots are going to be breaking up those tough soils, and especially with prairie plants, and those long roots that we saw, those when the roots die off, they are going to be adding nutrients and organic material to that soil. Cool. Any questions before we get into like looking at your own site and planning a garden? Doing all right? Okay. So right plant, right place. This is a super common and well-used phrase in the native plant world. This is know your site and know what plant can work there. The more you do this and the more your understanding of your site conditions and limitations are, the higher success rates you're going to have and the lower maintenance gardening you're going to be able to get. So we're going to talk about determining your site conditions. So this is a little bit more like figuring out, like, get excited about natives. Where do I start? What do I do? This is what we're going to go through. And it looks like we're missing sun. So let's talk about it. There's 3 different options that you can choose for sun. You can have full sun, you can have partial sun, and you can have shade. Full sun is going to be over 6 hours of direct sun. Partial sun, partial shade is going to be 4 to 6 hours, and then shade is going to be over 4 hours, or less than 4 hours of sun. So once you determine that, you're just gonna like look out your window, go outside at different times of the day, and just like make note of that. Or if there's like very open area, nothing blocking it, obviously you're probably gonna have full sun. For soil moisture, this is gonna be dry, basic, or medium, and wet. So dry, you're gonna have super well drained soil. A lot of soil where I live in Stevens Point is very dry and well draining, very sandy. That's a really common characteristic, sand or gravel. Mesic or medium is more of a moist, woodland type, loamy soil. It can hold on to some dampness for a while, and it fluctuates on either end of that as well. And then wet would be like, has a lot of standing water, you're along a shoreline, or you have a really high water table. And then the size of your garden, when you're thinking about it, if you're just starting off, it's a really good idea to start small, and not get overwhelmed, and then get slowly addicted and keep adding to it every year. So one way to do that, or if you live in a apartment, still grow native plants. You can grow them in containers. You can grow in your backyard, or if you have like larger acreage, that is some different ways to think about it, and that will be navigating or determining some of your selections on moving forward in terms of seeds versus plugs. Oh, there we go. They're like these little auto animations. So you have determined your site conditions. Then the fun part, you get to pick your plants, which everyone wants to do at the very first step, but it's good to wait for the second step to do that. Now you know what plants are going to fit into your limitation. This is poke milkweed. This is one of my favorite plants. It's a shade-loving milkweed. This is just an example of what you might see at a nursery or online. Just kind of how to read this. You have sunlight at the top. This one can handle partial sun and shade as well. The moisture is more of that medium woodland type of milkweed, and then it has its bloom time. That'll be important later. Always make note of that. And then you have your height here, 5 feet base. It's a pretty well-contained plant. They do get tall, but they're not going to be like really bushy and overgrown and everything. So it's nice to keep those in mind if you have limitations on like, oh, there's some signage. If you're planting and you're on the front street and you have a sign that you can't block for traffic, or if you have neighbors, things like that to keep in mind. Or if you have paths, you don't want something like spilling over the sidewalk. Okay. So I'm just going to go over some general good beginner plants for a few different conditions that are great to start off with. Does anyone have any of these growing at their house right now? What do you got, Gina?
I have black-eyed Susans and butterfly milk.
Nice. Isn't butterfly milkweed so beautiful? It's like, what an orange flower. It's so striking. That one's really easy. I would say it's a good beginner one. Really good for super dry, sunny conditions. And it's pretty well behaved. It's not going to get huge. And those flowers are so gorgeous, I feel like. I'd be happy to. Lancet Coreopsis. That's a really nice one. Really happy flowers with kind of dainty stem, and those are going to be really nice. They're good for sandy soil as well. Wild bergamot. It's also called bee balms. It's a really popular one. It's you can use it as like an herb. It's like a herbal tea, and I often see like what am I trying to say? Oh, hummingbird moths. Have you seen those before? They look like miniature hummingbirds on the wild bergamot as well. Big. They have a good nectar source. So there's a lot of pretty insects on them as well. Paradrapsy here. That one some people call cousin it grass. But you guys, have you seen it in person? It like really hangs over and gets really drapey. Very dramatic, I would say. And it kind of has a nice smell when it goes to me. Black-eyed Susan is probably one of the most common and well-known plants besides echinacea. Feel like everyone and their mom knows Black-eyed Susan, but very nice plant to grow. Cytosphrama, a really nice grass, bunch grass, pale purple coneflower, and then you have little blue stem. Little blue stem is great. It's really striking and has a really beautiful fall color. All right, next we have some more shade plants. I don't know about you, but like when I go for hikes and stuff, I'm usually in the woods. So when I fell in love with native plants, like the shade tolerant, spring ephemerals, woodland plants were kind of like the ones I started to fall in love with. So some of these I've loved for a long time. Like wild geranium, that's a really nice ground cover. And if you like more of the like cultivated geraniums, it's a nice little nod to them while still keeping it in there. Zigzag goldenrod. Sorry, I'm kind of jumping all over the place here. Zigzag goldenrod is great for ground cover. Goldenrods are like a keystone species, so they are they sustain a lot of different species of insects and pollinators. They also have a really late bloom time, which is very important, especially in like September, October. They'll be having flowers out there, and because there are still insects buzzing around then. So it's really nice to have a late season bloomer. Wild strawberry, a really nice ground cover that spreads really well. You will get edible fruits. They are a lot smaller than your like grocery store strawberry, and you will have to fight squirrels and rabbits for them. So maybe don't think you'll never have to buy strawberries again. Go to farmers market. We have long beak sedge. This is a really beautiful sedge that I saw this growing along the Wisconsin River on the Green Circle Trail. It's really nice for some texture in the shade conditions. A lot of sedges are really great in the shade. Wild columbine. That's also another really common plant that there are cultivars of. You'll see them sometimes with purple flowers or like really big flowers. That is a cultivar off of the wild columbine. And just a quick note on cultivars and nativars. We do definitely, when possible, want to be choosing straight native species. When plants are chosen for or bred for, this wild columbine flower is so beautiful, let's make it bigger, let's make it brighter. It can reduce some of the food source or nectar source, or the nectar supply in the plant, so it's not as beneficial to the pollinators. Just as a side note. And then we have some lady fern. Ferns are super nice in the shade, very easy to grow. Bottle brush grass. That one I feel like has a good name. It looks like a baby bottle brush when you're doing dishes. And then wild blue phlox. That one's a nice slow growing plant. I think it's also called wild sweet william. But that has some nice like blue color as well. There's so many plants in the native plant world that are called blue, but aren't actually blue. There's purple or pinky purple. So it's nice to see one that's like, okay, yeah, you can be called blue. Like here, blue vervain. That is not blue. That's purple. These are more beginner wet plants. Does anyone live in an area where they have more wet site? Cool. They're also some of my favorite plants. Sneezeweed, I think, is just like the happiest plant I've ever seen. Top left there. That grows really well, like along the river or on the shoreline. It can also doesn't have to be super wet conditions to grow that. You can have like moist conditions as well and still grow that, but it does really well on the side of a river. Cardinal flower is another pretty iconic one. That is actually a biennial. So most of these plants are all perennials or biennials, which means it completes its life cycle in 2 years. Annual is just a 1 year life cycle completion. But the cardinal flower is nice. You might be thinking like, 2 years and then it dies. Like, what the heck? Why did I even plant it? But they self-seed. They make a lot of seeds. They drop a lot of seeds, and then they have a lot of new plants growing back up. So you don't have to worry about them like dying and being gone necessarily. Then we have that swamp milkweed right there again. Mountain mint on the right. That one is a phenomenal source for seeing pollinators on. All sorts of insects are attracted to that one, and you can also use that as culinary goods as well. It smells amazing. More sedges. Brown fox sedges down there on the bottom left. That has a really wide variety or a wide range of conditions that it can tolerate. So that's just nice to throw in a lot of different places. New England aster, I feel like, is one that you'll see around town blooming in the fall. Like all of a sudden it's blooming all over the place. That's a really nice late bloomer as well. We have common boneset. I don't know if you can see in this picture, but the leaves are actually fused together around the stem. So, which is a nice way to remember it. Common boneset. I was told by previous teachers that Native Americans might have used this as an herb that helps with bone breaking. And then blue vervain, really easy plant to grow, loves moist conditions, and the spike of the flower, when the flowers are like that, really nice for pollinators because you'll get like a range of bloom times as it blooms up or down the stalk or the spike. Same with cardinal flower, you have all of those different flowers blooming at different times. Oh, did it again. All right, here we go. We're back. Maybe. Okay. So maybe we got some plant inspo down. Write up your favorite. When choosing plants for your new and exciting garden bed, it's really nice to keep it diverse, which doesn't mean, as hard as it is, not adding every single plant that you love into your garden. But really choose a few from different groups of plants, and it's going to make it really readable and not look, I don't want to say messy, but it's just going to look really nice and intentional. So I like to include flowering plants with different textures. There's so many different textures of plants, so many different leaf shapes. The possibilities are endless. And then going from there, early, mid, and late season bloomers, that's going to keep the interest of your garden, everything, or something's going to be blooming all of the time. And you're going to have something early, then that will die back, and then the mid season will come in after that, and then the late season bloomers after that. And that's really how to support your pollinators and then for your birds as well. I want to also really emphasize use more grasses, use more sedges. It's so easy to get really excited about the super showy plants, but I promise having a really nice backdrop of a lot of grasses and sedges really just makes those flowers shine a lot more. And that really highlights them. Shrubs are super great if you have space for them. They're wonderful for birds, offering berries, offering habitat, and shelter. And then also think of different heights. The tall plant in here is rattlesnake master. And I think there's poppy mallow down there as well. I think, some side oak grasses on the top left back there. Think of different heights, and it really creates a lot of interest. If everything was just one height, all of those plants are going to get lost together. And when you're thinking about planting a native garden, there are a few different ways to go. You can make it look more naturalistic or wild, like the one on the left, or it can look even a lot more traditional and maintain like you would with non-native, like the one on the right. So it's really up to you and what you're into. All right, we doing okay? Does anyone have any questions so far? Yeah. All right, then I'm gonna move on to design principles, and this might be like Native Plants 2.0 class, but I think you guys are fully capable, and I know you're gonna go home and like draw up your design plans for your next garden. It's the solstice, like let's think of the new year. Spring's around the corner, right? All right. So one thing I want to highlight for principle or suggestion are grouping your plans. Generally speaking, clusters of 3 to 5 or even more odd numbers are really appealing to the eye. Also, planting clusters of the same species of plants make it a lot easier for pollinators to actually find the plant. When it's just like one dotted here, one dotted there, it's a lot of work to jump around. When they can just like hop in that same cluster, it's so much easier for them for that. And then you're just going to repeat those clusters around your garden. This creates a lot of continuity and keeps your eye moving throughout the garden, makes it more readable. Going back to structure and layers, we talked a little bit about height, but generally speaking, if you have a plant that's like, this is your statement plant or it's really tall, I would choose fewer of those, so it really stands out, and then adding in shorter plants around it. So you're gonna have those swaths of clusters that are creating seasonal interest. Those are the flowers that are going to be blooming early season to late season. And then you're going to have a lot of grasses mixed in there. What I like to do is add in grasses really densely packed together, maybe like 1 per square foot. This is what I do at Lucky Bird. This creates a really nice living green mulch. So that's going to reduce your weed pressure. And that creates a little bit more, I think I'm jumping ahead of slide here, but I think that's going to be creating more competition as the plants would experience in the wild. So that's like green mulch, and then ground cover. That's another way to do green mulch, like those lower growing plants like the wild strawberry or wild geranium. Those are going to be nice on the ground, keeping those weeds at bay as well. Yeah. Here we are, plant density, less weed pressure, and just kind of some examples. The one on the right here is planted very densely. I honestly can't tell what plants these are at all, but I just like the visual. And on the left, this is a really sad grass that one is babied way too much. It looks like they've been piling mulch on it, piling mulch on it, and piling mulch on it. And that's just going to add a lot of organic matter, and it's just going to make the soil too rich. And with natives, you really want to let that native soil do its thing and let the plants thrive in that. You don't need to baby them. And it just needs more plants around it to support it. When you plant dense, if you're going to have the support of the shorter plants holding up the taller plants as well. Okay, and this is a principle that I really love, choose to care. This is a concept that feels stemmed from the fact that traditional lawn maintenance and gardening looks a lot different in the native plant world, and a lot of people have the impression that native plants have to look messy or that it's wild and unkept. And a cue to care is something, a visual representation or an indicator that will tell someone that's walking by, like, oh, this is intentional. It's purposeful, and there's a reason for this. So ways to do that are adding a bench, making it a place that someone can come sit, or just like the idea of it, like that it's a destination. And informational signage. We have like our pollinator friendly garden. Planting in masses on the upper left. That's that Cousin It prairie drop seed. Oh, it's so fun. When things are planted in mass, it looks intentional. It's not going to be as busy to the eye. And then keeping those edges and paths clear. Yard art, stepping stones going through, birdhouses, or I really love when people have labels on their plants when you're walking down the street. I think that's really fun and really informational, and it's fun for people that might not know. All right, so I think this is the last design principle maybe, but it's think seasonally. So we know we talked about bloom time, but what about the time after the blooms? Your garden's still going to be there. You want those blooms throughout the season, but then there's also an opportunity for interest in the fall and in the winter. So this is a residential lot that someone planted natives, and this is it in the spring or early summer maybe. This is it in the fall. Beautiful tones of brown, Looks like there's like a wild indigo or bacteria there, creating a lot of texture and a lot of fun different tones. And then here it is in the winter. I don't know, that looks so moody and like ice king. This is just a good reminder, like all of these stems, all of these grasses are part of your garden, are part of life, and like let's appreciate them throughout the year. Because not only are they offering birds seeds and other wildlife habitat, but I think it just adds so much more beauty than just like dead grass, dirty snow. Let's add some texture in there. And that being said, let's ditch the fall cleanup. I know it could be a tough pill to swallow for some folks, but leaving your stems standing offer great habitat for our insects. And like I said, of those seed heads for birds throughout the winter months when things are getting slim pickings. If you do want to clean up, just wait till like early spring if possible. Or if you do like to clip your stems, leaving them in different heights, but at least I think it's like 16 to 24 inches for cavity nesting bees so they can access inside of the stem, but just leave some stems standing. Don't cut it all the way to the ground. But try to leave it all the way up. All right. Prepping your garden. This is a pretty important step. You are going to set yourself up for much higher success when your site is prepped and you don't have a bunch of weed seeds in your seed bank. I'm just going to go over 3 ways to do that. I'm going to start with the one that I've been doing recently and kind of hate, which is sod removal. My partner and I have been we installed a couple gardens this fall, and it was like, okay, we're ready, we have the plans, let's do it. Oh, but wait, there's grass here. So this is a really great way to have immediate results when you're all ready to go and you have a small space. It's really physically demanding, especially when you're doing it by hand and shovel. So I would keep it on the smaller side for gardens. Because it's going to take way too long otherwise. But you can also use a sod cutter. You can rent one of those too. And also disposing of the sod can be a big factor. Like we have a little RAV4 and we just like had a huge mound of sod in the back of it going to the city compost. Because I don't have a compost pile, but I know some folks from Bucket Records were here, so maybe they want some of that compost too. So that's one option. Solarization is another. This one is using the sun to your advantage. You want to cut your grass really short, and then you're going to be putting some thick clear plastic over top of it. You're going to dig kind of a trench around your garden and then backfill that in with the plastic tucked in, so it's really like nice and tight. You don't want to let any of that heat escape. So this works well in sunny locations because you do need the sun to heat up the soil and to scorch what was living underneath. This does take several months. You can start it in early spring and let it like kind of bake all throughout the summer. And then you can ideally plant by fall. And this method is good for places with high weed pressure. It can also alter the seed bed to be more favorable weeds or weeds that are easier to remove when you're between your natives. So it's going to go through a lot of the weed seed that would be like really problematic, or like those perennial weeds, those will come up and destroy them. And this information, there's a really great resource on Thirsty Society has all of these laid out. They're super scientific on the way they tested these methods, and there's so much information, and there are way more methods than this. So feel free to check that out as well. And then the last one is sheet mulching. I feel like this got kind of popular recently or in the last few years. This will also can take a few months or several months. I think a lot of people maybe kind of don't wait long enough before they start planting. But this can be done in shady areas, like whereas the solarization you couldn't use this method. So you will also cut the grass really short, and then you're gonna stack your nitrogen layer and then a carbon layer, nitrogen layer, carbon layer. And this is gonna break down, killing the grass underneath and keeping the nitrogen to carbon ratio at an ideal level. So there are 6 layers of this that the Xerces Society recommends. You can use like mulch, cardboard, newspaper, straw, manure, wood chips, that sort of thing. And for this, when you're ready to actually plant, you would just move your mulch to the side and like cut a hole if there's still something to cut through to plant your plants there. So I would say that the sheet mulch option, you probably wouldn't be using seeds. You would be using transplants or plugs. Speaking of, we have seeds or plugs. These are 2 really great options of adding native plants. Some pros and cons of seeds. They're really affordable, much more affordable than plugs. For a large area, like if you have that acreage size, native garden that you're planting, you're gonna want to go with seeds. They give more of a naturalistic look, and you can even seed in the winter, which is really nice, right on top of snow. Though you do have to have your site prepped for that. Some cons include they are a lot slower. Another phrase in the natural plant world is first year sleep, second year creep, third year leap. And that just is because the native plants are really putting a lot of energy into their root systems. So you're not gonna see a more mature garden until a number of years from you planting it. It's a lot harder to be precise with seeds. You're not gonna be like, okay, I want this one plant here, this one plant there. You're gonna have to be a lot more okay with like variability. And another one, especially for beginners, it can be pretty difficult to determine what's a seed and what's a weed in the spring when things are coming up. And then for plugs, on the top right here, they make a big immediate impact. They're faster to mature. Generally, plugs are on their like first year of growth. So I will have some flowering within their first year. This picture of blue vervain was planted the same time that I planted with the echinacea on the top, and this was I think 3 months later, already flowering. You can create more of a design look with plugs, and they'll stand up better to weeds since they already have that root mass there. They're going to be a little bit more established, so the weeds are going to be a lot more identifiable. The cons, like I said, higher cost, and it is labor intensive to plant like 200 plugs, then spreading some seeds. All right, we're nearing the end here. Do you guys have any questions? We're doing okay? All right. Wild ones, folks, this is a little bit of a repeat around stratification, but I just want to include this because if anyone wants to start seeds at their house to grow plants for your garden, this will be important. And when I say grow seeds, I don't mean like you're spreading seeds outside. I mean like you're starting them to then plant as little seedlings. So the process of stratification, you're going to be trying to replicate through conditions required for germination to occur. So this is a survival mechanism for seeds, is their dormancy period. If all seeds just germinated right away when they hit the soil, a lot of them would die over winter because it would be generally fall when the seeds are ready to drop. So this stratification process breaks the seed dormancy and allows for germination to happen. And this is naturally happening all the time, especially in winter right now. Like freezing, thawing, cold, moist conditions. Those are our local conditions for germination and stratification. And if you were to live in like the southern hemisphere, you would probably be using warm and wet conditions for your stratification. So it just is like you're replicating what's going on outside. And then scarification is a form of stratification, which is fun because there's a lot of different ways to do that. But that is damaging a seed coat, especially those really thick seed coats, damaging it so the germination can occur and water can enter the seed. And one method of that is birds eating seeds or other animals eating seeds, going through the digestive tract and then pooping it out. And then that stomach acid and going through that process is going to break that seed coat. And I did learn recently that mistletoe is one of those plants. So you can think of birds pooping that out next time. That's how romantic. And then fire. Fire is another one. Like jack pine needs fire for those their seeds to open, their cones to open. All right, so that being said, I'm just going to give a little example here. If you're, this example, you're growing pearly everlasting, beautiful host plant, many species. You're going to first want to determine what your germination requirements are. So I brought some of these. I think a couple were taken, which is great. But if anyone wants to just peruse this one or have it, that's totally fine. This is from Prairie Moon Nursery. Their website has all of this information as well. They're a great resource. And they have this list here that clearly tells their code for stratification. So for pearly everlasting, I'm just going to tell you is a C30. And C means stratification needed number of days. And so this is a cold, moist minimum day period. So it needs 30 days of cold, moist conditions to germinate. This little tiny little seed over here too. Pretty wild. Other ones, germination codes that I'll use sometimes are a hot water treatment. A lot of grasses have no treatment at all, which is really nice because you can just germinate them when you give them moist, warm conditions. And then there are some, especially woodland plants that require double dormancy stratification, so they need to go through like warm conditions, cold conditions, and then warm conditions again. So those take a little bit more time. Am I okay on time? Okay, I'll be quick. All right, so there's a couple different methods. This is for stratifying inside your house. You can use sand. You can mix the sand with water to form a ball, mix in the seeds, and refrigerate it in the bag. And this is going to replicate those winter conditions. You're going to leave it in your fridge for 30 days, just like the pearly everlasting wanted. And then you could sprinkle that whole sand mixture on a pot and start them inside or fill them outside as well. You can also use a coffee filter or paper towel. I have been favoring the sand or like vermiculite type mixture because I feel like sometimes the paper towel gets a little bit moldy in the fridge. So it's just something you have to check on, but they're just different options. Briefly soak your seeds. You're going to wring out your material and then put the seeds on a single layer and then fold it all up, refrigerate it, and then wait your 30 days and come back to it. Another reason I don't love this method is then you either have to let it dry out when you take it out of the fridge so you can pull the seeds off, or else the seeds are all like sticking to everything and it's hard to manage them when they're wet. Another really beginner friendly method is winter sowing. Has anyone winter sowed in jugs? But outside at least? Cool. This is really great because you're making a mini greenhouse and all these materials are super available. You're gonna poke a lot of holes on the bottom of a milk jug and then cut across, leaving the handle attached. So you're on like a little hinge. You're gonna put some potting mix in the bottom of the jug, put your seeds in, water everything, and then tape it back up so you have like a sealed mini greenhouse. But take the cap off, because taking the cap off is gonna allow rain, snow to get in there and to water those seeds. Then when spring comes and temperatures are warm, you should have some germination in there. And when you have those really warm days, you can cut the tape and just open those up so they don't get too hot. So you don't want them to get too hot and scorched. So you got to kind of keep an eye on them come springtime. And then just to finish off, scarification. I love legumes. Those are things like lupin, bushhead, clover. You have your bacteria, but a lot of them have really hard seed coats. So for tough ones like these, I like to nick them. Just like take a little knife, get your little tweezers out. Magnifying glass would be helpful, but seed by seed, I go and take my little knife and cut them, and you'll have seeds go flying all over your house. But I find that method to help really nicely because that immediately allows the water to absorb into your seed when you put it in that sand or paper towel. It doesn't have to work its way through there. And then this picture in the middle, you can see I have lupin seeds already germinating. That happened in the fridge after I did this. Some people recommend to rub sandpaper because that's like scarifying the seed. That's hurting the seed coat. But I find that can be really hard to stop at the right time. And like you can see in this picture, this actual internal part of the seed is getting roughed and damaged, and you'll see that on your little cotyledons as well when it germinates. So I stopped doing that, and also I hate the feeling of the sandpaper on my hand. So I would highly recommend if you're trying to grow any legumes to try that out because I feel like the germination is really, really successful. And then you can also use boiling water or sulfuric acid, which I've never done. But that is all I have for you today. Here's beautiful Vendel lupin here, most of the Carter blue butterfly. I hope you have a little inspo to grow some native plants. You guys have any questions at all? Yeah.
I have a question about the cleaning. You said you don't have to do it, or you shouldn't do it in the fall, and you can do it in the spring, but do you have to do it at all?
No, you don't have to do it at all. You don't have. The question was, do you like for like fall cleanup? Do you have to do any sort of cleanup at all? No, generally. If you have some like really big bunch grasses, sometimes it's nice to cut the grass from last year before the new growth gets too tall. Just so it's like really green and pretty, but like you don't have to do anything. It'll take care of itself and add to the organic matter. Yeah, what's over there?
Well, if you have single ones, wouldn't they become group plants after a while if they see, you know?
Do you mean
And I'm not sure, I can't tell you what I'm, speaking about, but.
they will be, they still, like for the cardinal flower example, when they're reseeding, they will be, yeah, they'll grow in and create like a massive plant. Like, yeah, when you're planting many, they still will be individual plants, but they'll really be filling out and creating a big swath.
I'm saying.
Well, they will, yeah, when they seed. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You had talked about high weed tension or something like that. What does that mean?
High weed. Oh, for the solarization process. Yeah, that grass removal process is good for like a site with really high weed pressure. So there's a lot of weeds, a lot of perennial weeds or like rhizomatic weeds, ones that like grow underground and just keep popping up. That's good for that. A little bit tougher on those weeds.
So I didn't prep my site well like I should have. I was very excited about all the different things. And so now I'm like 3 or 4 years in, and I think it's a type of fleeting. It's these white flowers that are about this big, and they have taken over the whole area. And I still have the native, like the variety of natives that I planted. But at what point do you start like holding them to allow the others to grow, or should I just let them kind of run wild and the others will continue to develop and grow stronger?
Did you plant them with like seeds or with transplant?
I did both lots and seed and
Sure. So the seeds that you still spread are in that seed bank still. So they just need kind of an opportunity. So I don't know if it's possible to like leave those flea bait or anything.
It is. Should I pull them out or should I?
You can just snip them so you're not disturbing the soil as much. And if you wanted to plant plugs in between to kind of like, create some room and block the soil with something that's desirable, like from other weeds to come up, and be a little bit more competitive that way. But yeah, it's hard because once you go that route, you don't want to damage the plants already planted, but like you get so excited, it's hard to not don't head for it. Yeah.
Well, Family, you showed us several different varieties of milkweed.
Mm-hmm.
Do the monarchs work with all those varieties, or are they specific ones?
So all of the milkweed will support monarchs. They do have preference to common milkweed though. Yeah, which is great. But common milkweed can be a little bit aggressive. They have a really long taproot, so they're hard to move or like transplant once they get established. So it's nice to plant those types of like more aggressive species with other aggressive species, so they kind of like keep each other in check. Good question, but yes, if they don't have common weed available, they will go to other ones for sure. Mm-hmm.
With indigo, sorry to be like specific, but like
Okay.
it's tough getting seeds before the needles get in.
Oh.
At them. Like, do you have any tips on like how to collect indigo seeds without that problem?
So that can definitely be tricky, and I don't know if people have more experience in that than me, but I know that when I like to harvest seed or collect seeds from something, and I don't want to like have to raise someone, I will, as in like an insect or not people. I'll cut those like little mesh, really fine mesh like jewelry bags over it after you can tell that it's been pollinated. Because once you close it off, it's, nothing's really going to get in there. So you want to make sure it's pollinated first. But I would use those over it. So if they do open the seed too, it will collect into that bag, but it will also stop things from getting in. People use that for like tomatoes and stuff in their garden as well. But maybe trying that. I don't know. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is there a way that we can use
So that's a really good question. It depends on the invasive plant and the conditions, but you can definitely try removing them as much as possible and then planting things that are a little bit more aggressive to counteract them and just kind of keep them in check. Sometimes fully pulling things, I know if it'll smell like mustard and stuff, you're disturbing the soil and like allowing those seeds to germinate repeatedly. So it depends on the invasive species, but sometimes it's hard to determine if like pulling it, just cutting it, or sometimes even using like a herbicide stump treatment to knock those back and then planting something a little bit aggressive to counteract. Oh, sure. Yeah. But people say, yeah, that's a tough one. Good luck. Yes.
We worked with these things, like ground covers or rocks. I try to feeds to get.
I have experience using some seed from Fairy Moon. For that for a larger garden, it was like I think a quarter acre that was seeded, and they will come with sterile called regreen. It's a sterile cover crop that shouldn't reproduce. And that will really quick get established and kind of shade the other seedlings of the native plants and like allow them to get a little bit more established before the regreen dies out. That would be something to look into. You can totally use other cover crops, I'm sure. But I don't have any direct experience with that. But speaking of weed barrier, all that sort of stuff, I just want to put a plug in for not using plastic weed barrier if possible. It will just break down into your soil and release microplastic, and it's just never gonna hold up anyways. And then weed will grow through it, and it really doesn't do any good for your soil that's underneath it. So, just saying. No judgment, but just saying. Cool.
So Amanda, you didn't mention about how people can purchase native plants from you. So let's talk about plug for your business.
Growing them. So I will be having some pop-up growing or plant sales throughout the summer and the spring and the fall. Probably downtown on the square. I will be having all of that information on Facebook, Instagram, and my website, luckybirdnative.com. And you can also reach me by email too. And I have business cards over there. Check that out.
Thank you. And Amanda brought some native seeds to share, and we brought some native seeds to share as well. Ours are grasses, and I think yours are
A mix.
Yep. So feel free to start your garden here by grabbing some seeds today and helping yourself to that. I also just wanted to mention in closing, at Golden Sands RC&D, we do a lot with native plants, not just working with partners like Lucky Bird Natives, but also if you've been to our chat talks before, you've heard us talk about managed grazing. And I'm going to introduce really quickly in the back our regenerative agriculture specialist, or let him introduce himself. So Asher's job has to do with managed grazing and also soil health, and native plants is a big part of that. All of our grazing plans feature seed mixes that are all native plants, and that's the basis of that cycle of agriculture. Also, Golden Sands RC&D both coordinates and is fiscal sponsor for the Central Wisconsin Invasives Partnership, which is a CISMA, a Cooperative Invasive Species Management. It's the AO. Agreement? No? Cooperative Invasive Species Management Association. So that is one of the biggest threats to our native plants is these invaders. So we're working hard on a regional level to address invasive plants. So that is something that you can get involved with. So I invite you to come up and check out our materials, check out our website. One other staff member I should have introduced earlier, and I apologize. And Jenna, if you want to speak briefly about Wild Ones, and
I'm Jenna. I'm an administrative coordinator at Golden Sands RC&D. I also volunteer for a nonprofit called Wild Ones. It's a nationwide organization. There's a Central Wisconsin chapter. And Amanda's also part of that chapter as well. We meet right now, sort of our dormant season. We start our meetings I think in March. We go through November, but we meet for sure at least once a month. There's a lot of garden walks that you do. Give away a lot of native plants, grow native plants. So if you really have a passion for this, that's a really great organization to get involved with. It's called Wild Ones, and feel free to chat with me more about it if you want.
And Genesis card is up here, as well as Asher's and myself. One other program that I wanted to mention that we're involved with is the Partners for Fish and Wildlife program through the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. We have an affiliate, Bo Henderson. He was doing a TED Talk here not too long ago. But they have cost shares and opportunities if you want to restore some of your land to native prairie. They can help you do that with the expertise, with the funding, all kinds of different things. So Bo's card is up here as well. Thanks so much for coming to our Winter Solstice Staff Talk. It was a great time today. Thank you, Amanda. You did a great presentation, and we're so happy to have you today.